The pen was still in my hand when my phone began to vibrate against the polished bank counter, and I remember thinking, absurdly, that the sound was too loud for a room this quiet. "Sorry," I whispered to the loan officer, glancing at Evelyn beside me, who smiled that soft, encouraging smile she always gave me, the one that made strangers say what a lovely niece you have. I almost let it go to voicemail. I wish, some nights, that I had. I answered instead. "Eleanor?" It was Marjorie, my neighbor of 19 years, and her voice had the particular tightness of someone trying not to alarm you while doing exactly that. "Eleanor, are you moving? Because there are 2 moving trucks in your driveway. Big ones. Men are carrying out your dining table right now. The one with the carved legs. Eleanor, they're taking your mother's china cabinet." For a moment I simply sat there, the phone warm against my ear, the bank's air conditioning humming, the loan officer's mouth still moving with words about interest rates I could no longer hear. "Marjorie," I said, and I noticed how calm my own voice sounded. "How far away? Say that again." She did. Every word landed like a stone dropped into still water, and I watched Evelyn's face out of the corner of my eye, watched it stay so perfectly, beautifully unbothered, and something in the base of my skull, some old animal instinct sharpened by 34 years of reading children's faces for lies, went very, very still. "I have to go," I told the loan officer, rising so fast my chair scraped the floor. "Aunt Eleanor, what's wrong?" Evelyn asked, already reaching for her purse, already performing concern with the fluency of long practice. I didn't know that yet. Not consciously. But some part of me, the part that had spent 3 decades watching children learn to lie and learn to stop, filed away the half-second delay before her eyebrows rose. The drive home took 11 minutes. I know because I watched the clock the entire time, the way you watch a wound to see if it will stop bleeding on its own. Evelyn drove. She insisted on it. "You're shaking, Aunt Eleanor, let me," and I let her, because my hands genuinely were shaking, and because it did not yet occur to me that the person steering me toward the wreckage might have built it. We turned onto Larkspur Lane and I saw the trucks first. Then I saw my front door standing open like a mouth. Then I saw the empty rectangle of dust on the porch where my grandmother's rocking chair had sat for 40 years, and something in my chest folded in on itself. I was out of the car before it fully stopped. You can't," a young man in a moving company polo started to say, and I walked past him into my own house as though I were a ghost returning to inspect the site of my death. Empty. Not ransacked. Emptied. Precisely. Professionally. The Persian rug in the hallway, gone. The photographs of my late husband, gone from the walls, leaving only faint, darker rectangles where the paint had been protected from 30 years of sun. My mother's jewelry box. My father's war medals. The good silver. All of it, gone, and gone in a way that spoke not of desperation but of a checklist, calmly executed. "There's no forced entry," said the police officer who arrived 14 minutes later, crouching by my front door with the mild, apologetic tone of a man delivering bad news he doesn't yet understand the size of. Security panel logs show it was disarmed with the correct code at 9:47 this morning. Who else has your alarm code? I opened my mouth to say no one, and then I closed it again, because that wasn't quite true anymore, was it? 6 months ago, when my knees had started giving me trouble on the stairs, when Evelyn had started staying over just to help, I had given her the code myself. Written it on a sticky note in my own hand and pressed it into her palm and told her, "You're the only family I have left, sweetheart, of course you should have it." I looked at her then. Really looked. She was standing in the doorway of my gutted living room with her hand pressed to her mouth in a shape that, I was beginning to understand, might have been rehearsed. "Aunt Eleanor," she said, "I don't understand." Who would do this to you? I did not answer her. I was already doing the thing I had done for 34 years in a principal's office, facing down a child who had copied someone else's homework and was performing indignation at the accusation before it had even been made. I was watching her hands. Steady. Not a single tremor. Mine, I noticed, would not stop shaking for 3 more days. I did not confront her. Not that night, not that week. I want to be honest about why. Because there is a version of this story where I am simply brave, and that is not the true version. The true version is that I was afraid that if I was wrong, I would lose the only family I had left over a paranoid delusion, and afraid that if I was right, I would lose her anyway, except this time I would also lose whatever was left of the house. So instead, I became very good at pretending. I just don't understand it, I told Evelyn over tea. 3 days after the theft, my voice pitched to exactly the register of a confused, frightened old woman. The police say there's nothing else they can do. Maybe it's for the best. Maybe I should just sell the lot and move somewhere smaller. It's all become too much for me. I watched something flicker behind her eyes when I said sell. A brightness. Quickly smothered. But I had spent my life watching 14-year-olds try to smother exactly that kind of brightness when they thought they'd gotten away with something. The next morning, I called Margaret Hale. Margaret had been a lawyer for 26 years, the kind of woman who wore reading glasses on a chain not because her eyesight required it, but because it gave her somewhere to rest her hands while she watched you lie to her. She had handled my husband's estate a decade earlier. She did not believe in coincidences. And when I told her about the trucks, the code, the timing, the loan application, interrupted at the exact moment my house was being stripped bare, she took off her glasses entirely and set them on the desk between us like a small, deliberate weapon being unsheathed. Eleanor, she said, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Say nothing to anyone. Not to the police beyond what you've already said. Not to Evelyn. Especially not to Evelyn. We are going to find out exactly what happened, and we are going to do it quietly, and we are going to do it before she knows we're looking. You think it's her, I said. It wasn't a question. I needed to hear someone else say it, because some rooms in your own mind you cannot enter alone. I think, Margaret said, that someone stopped your loan application online at 9:41 that morning. 6 minutes before the moving trucks began loading. I think that is not a coincidence, and I think we should find out who had the access to do it. The forensic accountant's name was Priya Deshmukh, and she worked out of a converted loft office that smelled of coffee and printer toner, 3 monitors arranged around her like the instrument panel of a cockpit. Margaret had called her that same afternoon. I sat in the corner and watched Priya's fingers move across a keyboard with the same unhurried precision I imagined a surgeon might use, and I felt, for the first time in 3 days, something other than grief. I felt the beginning of purpose. Your bank loan application, Priya said, 2 days later, turning one of her monitors toward me, was withdrawn online at 9:41 a.m. using your online banking credentials. Logged in from an IP address that resolves to, she paused, tapping a key, an apartment complex on Delancey Street. That's not my address, I said. No, Priya agreed. It's Evelyn's. I felt the words land somewhere behind my sternum, a slow, cold weight settling into place, but I did not gasp, and I did not cry, because Margaret had told me, whatever you find, you keep it inside until we are ready. And I had spent 34 years disciplining children in the art of a calm face over a churning stomach. I could discipline myself the same way. There's more, Priya said. Your mailing address with the county assessor's office was changed 6 weeks ago. Redirected to a P.O. box registered under a name I want you to look at very carefully. She turned the second monitor. Evelyn R. Whitfield, trustee. Trustee, I repeated. Trustee of what? Margaret answered that one, sliding a printed document across the table, a document I had never signed, never seen, never in my life authorized, bearing at its bottom a signature that was, to any untrained eye, unmistakably mine. A durable financial power of attorney, Margaret said quietly. Filed at the county recorder's office 5 weeks ago. It names Evelyn as your sole financial agent, on the grounds that you are, and I'm quoting the accompanying physician's letter here, exhibiting early-stage cognitive decline consistent with dementia, rendering her unable to manage her own financial affairs. The room went very quiet. Somewhere outside, a truck reversed, beeping steadily, an ordinary sound from an ordinary world that I suddenly felt very far away from. I have never been examined for dementia, I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. I have never met whatever physician wrote that letter. I know, Margaret said. So the question becomes, who is this physician, and did he actually write it? He hadn't. It took Priya for days to trace the letterhead to a retired doctor who had, in fact, passed away 11 months earlier. His name and license number simply lifted from an old letter Evelyn had once found among my husband's medical files and grafted onto her fabrication. The house, meanwhile, sat empty and echoing, and each night I walked through its bare rooms and ran my hand along the dust shadows on the walls where 40 years of a life had hung, and I let myself feel exactly as much grief as I needed to feel, alone, in the dark, where no one, especially not Evelyn, could see it and mistake it for weakness she could use. The last thread was the signature itself, and it was Margaret who pulled it. Every notarized document has a witness, she told me, over coffee that had long gone cold. A notary who is legally required to verify identity before stamping. Someone stamped this power of attorney. Someone looked at whoever walked through their door claiming to be you, Eleanor, and decided that person was telling the truth. The notary's name was Diane Kowalski, and she ran a small shipping and notary shop wedged between a dry cleaner and a nail salon on the east side of town. Margaret went to see her alone, without me, because she said, gently, sometimes the truth comes out easier when the wronged party isn't sitting in the room, absorbing it. Diane Kowalski cried within the first 10 minutes, Margaret told me later. Not from guilt, exactly from fear. Evelyn had come to her office alone, she said, presenting herself as though she was speaking on behalf of an elderly aunt too frail and confused to travel. She had brought a photocopy of my driver's license. She had brought what she called a doctor's letter confirming my incapacity. She had brought tears, real ones, Diane thought at the time, and a story about a beloved aunt slipping away into confusion, and how painful it was to have to manage everything now, alone, because there was no one else. She said her aunt got overwhelmed just leaving the house some days, Diane told Margaret, her hands twisting a tissue into shreds. She said it would be kinder not to make her come in and be embarrassed, in front of a stranger. I should have insisted on meeting you in person. I know that. I know the law requires it. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Margaret did not raise her voice. She simply asked Diane if she would be willing to put all of this, every detail, into a sworn, notarized statement of her own. Diane said yes before Margaret had even finished the sentence. That statement, combined with Priya's IP address logs, combined with the forged power of attorney, combined with the fabricated physician's letter, combined with the time-stamped cancellation of my loan application 6 minutes before 2 moving trucks pulled into my driveway, that became, over the following 3 weeks, a leather briefcase. I want to describe that briefcase, because I bought it myself, the week before the dinner, from a small shop downtown, and I remember running my hand over the cold, smooth grain of the leather and thinking, this is the exact shape and weight of the truth. It fits in one hand. It has been sitting in my house all along, waiting for me to find it. I invited Evelyn to Sunday dinner 3 weeks after the theft, in the half-furnished shell of what remained of my dining room, a table Margaret had helped me borrow from a consignment shop, two mismatched chairs, a single lit candle between us, because I wanted her to see exactly how much she had already taken from me, and I wanted her comfortable in that sight. "I've been thinking," I told her, over a roast chicken I had cooked myself, my hands steady now in a way they had not been in weeks, "about what you said. About it all being too much for me. Maybe you're right. Maybe I should just sell the house and let someone else worry about all of it." I watched it bloom across her face like sunrise, the thing she had been waiting 3 weeks to see. Relief. Triumph, thinly veiled as concern. "Oh, Aunt Eleanor, I think that's so wise," she said, reaching across the table to take my hand, and her palm was warm, and I did not pull away, because 34 years of watching children lie to my face had taught me that the moment right before the trap closes is the moment you must be gentlest. "I've actually already looked into a lovely little place, Sunny Meadows. It's called, very affordable, very manageable, and I could handle all the paperwork for you. You wouldn't have to worry about a single thing." "You've already looked into it," I repeated softly. "Just to help," she said. "I know how overwhelming it all is for you now." "Yes," I said. "I imagine it must have taken a great deal of planning." Something in her face paused. A half-second flicker, the same half-second flicker I'd caught in the bank 3 weeks earlier, and then it smoothed back over into concern, because she still believed, in that moment, that she was speaking to a confused old woman grateful for her help. I reached down beside my chair and lifted the briefcase onto the table. "I want to show you something," I said, and I opened it. I laid them out one at a time, unhurried, the way I once laid out evidence for parents who refused to believe their child had cheated, forged a signature, stolen from another student's locker, because sometimes people only believe what they can hold in their own hands. The forged power of attorney, with my signature that was not my signature. The physician's letter, from a doctor 11 months dead. The IP logs, Delancey Street, 9:41 a.m. Diane Kowalski's sworn statement, 3 pages, notarized, describing in her own careful handwriting exactly who had walked into her office and exactly what lies she had been told. Evelyn's face, across the candlelight, did not fall so much as collapse, the muscles simply giving way, all at once, like a building whose foundation has finally, after years of quiet erosion, given out. "Aunt Eleanor, I can explain." "You can," I agreed. "You'll have a great deal of time to." The front door opened. I had left it unlocked, on purpose, at exactly 7:45, because Detective Renata Ortiz of the Financial Crimes Unit had asked me to, and because I found that I wanted to watch Evelyn's face when the door opened rather than hear it from another room. 2 detectives stepped into the dining room, and I remember the strange, quiet grace of that moment. No shouting, no violence, just the calm, procedural cadence of consequence finally arriving on schedule. "Evelyn Whitfield," Detective Ortiz said, "you're under arrest for grand theft, identity fraud, and forgery of a legal instrument. You have the right to remain silent." Evelyn turned to me, and for the first time in 3 weeks, I saw something in her face that was not performance. It was simple, naked disbelief, the specific disbelief of someone who had spent months believing herself the only person in the room capable of a long game, only to discover, too late, that she had been playing against someone who had spent 34 years reading liars for a living. "You knew," she said. "This whole time. The whole dinner. You knew." "I knew," I said, "the moment Marjorie called me in that bank, and I watched your face not move at all." They walked her out past the empty dust shadows on my walls, past the bare rectangle where my grandmother's rocking chair had sat for 40 years, and I did not follow her to the door. I sat at the borrowed table, in the candlelight, and I let myself, finally, exhale. The trial took 8 months. Priya's forensic trail and Diane's sworn testimony left Evelyn's attorney almost nothing to argue with. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. grand theft, identity fraud, forgery of a public instrument, elder financial exploitation, a charge that in this state carries a sentencing enhancement precisely because the law recognizes what Evelyn had tried to bank on, that people believe a frightened old woman cannot fight back. She received 11 years. The moving company, once shown the forged authorization and the criminal charges, cooperated fully with recovering what could be recovered from the storage facility where Evelyn had quietly warehoused everything, waiting for the sale to close before liquidating it. My grandmother's rocking chair came home. My mother's china cabinet came home. Not everything did. Some pieces had already been sold before the trucks were even fully unloaded, but enough came home that walking back into my restored living room felt, for the first time in a year, like walking into a life that was actually mine again. Margaret helped me do one more thing before she closed the file for good. An irrevocable trust, she explained, sliding the papers across her desk, with a licensed corporate trustee and a court-appointed independent oversight clause. No single family member. No one will ever again have unilateral access to your accounts, your deed, or your medical authority. Not without 3 independent signatures and a judge's review. I signed it with a steady hand, in a house that echoed slightly less than it used to, and I thought of Evelyn's face across that candlelit table, the exact moment the truth landed heavier than she could carry. I had spent 34 years teaching children that the truth always comes out eventually, that there is no clever enough forgery, no smooth enough lie, that survives someone patient enough to keep watching. I had simply, at 61 years old, finally had the chance to prove it to someone who thought old women stop being able to watch. They don't. We just get quieter about it.